you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. I always believed the only thing worse than an intruder breaking in was the intruder I could never see. I returned to my childhood home one humid July evening, the sky still stained pink despite the sun dipping behind the row of maples at the end of the drive. I'd been away at university 2 years running, and this was my first real hiatus back under my parents' roof. The house stood placid on Mulberry Lane, its white siding dulled by decades of summer storms. Inside, it smelled of lavender air freshener and that faint must of old carpet, familiar and strangely comforting, like a blanket I'd outgrown but still sought. My parents were abroad for 2 weeks, celebrating their anniversary, and I volunteered to house sit. I unpacked in the living room, textbooks, a battered record player, and a box of photographs I carted from my dorm. Nothing felt amiss, until the soft thump above my head, just after midnight. I paused mid-unpack, scooped a photo from the box. Silence. When I set it down, a shuffling noise, like someone dragging a foot against the ceiling. Thinking it was an overactive branch against the roof, I shrugged it off and crawled into my old room. The ceiling looked exactly as I remembered. No hatch, no loft access, just a smooth pane of drywall. Yet, as I drifted into sleep, I wondered how a tree's footstep could sound so distinctly human. I woke early to birds chirping, sunlight falling on the carpet. My mind replayed the previous night's noises. I checked the plans of the house on my phone. No attic. I stared at the ceiling, and I felt a shiver as I pictured whatever had wandered up there. I convinced myself it was nothing until the next night. I was in the kitchen, humming to old vinyl records, when the overhead light flickered. I fiddled with the switch. It stayed lit. Above me, directly above the fridge, came a muffled thud, like someone pacing. I opened the fridge door. The humming stopped. When I closed it, a weighty silence pressed down. Then another step, deliberate, heavy, right above me. My heart pounded. I traced the ceiling joist with my eyes, but there was only flat drywall. I tapped it. Sounded solid. Over the next 2 days, dishes I left on the counter shifted. A cereal bowl slid to the edge. A spoon lay across its rim. My laptop, which I always placed neatly on the coffee table, faced the armchair instead of straight on. I chalked it up to me misplacing things, until I found a muddy footprint on the hardwood floor at dawn. Tiny specks of dirt led from the kitchen to the hallway, stopping abruptly at the base of the stairs where I slept. One evening at 2 a.m, the footsteps began, soft, then growing fainter as if someone padded away. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed the narrow stairs to the supposed attic entrance. There was no entrance. The ceiling panel in the upstairs hallway was seamless. I shone the light across the surface. My breath caught when I saw a faint, hand-shaped smudge in the dust coating the ceiling. I retrieved a screwdriver from the drawer and, after long moments of breathless hesitation, pressed its tip into the drywall. The blade sank with surprising ease. Heart in my throat, I pried at the edges. The panel popped loose, revealing a pitch-black crawl space behind the ceiling joist. Unused, unrecorded, impossible. I hesitated. My rational mind screamed to call the police, but what would I say? Officer, there's an attic here that shouldn't exist, and I think someone's living up there. I risked sounding insane. Instead, I peered inside. The tunnel smelled of damp plaster and old wood, air stale as though unopened since the 1950s. I flashed the beam inside. I saw nothing but inches of space and a tangle of wires, yet somewhere beyond the first joist bay, I detected movement. A soft scraping as though nails were being filed. My blood ran cold. I withdrew the panel and lay across the floor, every nerve screaming. I lay awake that night on my old twin bed, hugging the sheet tight, flashlight at the ready. At 3 a.m, the thumping began again, right above my head this time. I scuttled from the bed, placed hand on the ceiling hatch. Each thud reverberated through my palm, then silence. I pressed my ear to the hatch. A wet, breathy hiss pressed back. I bolted from the room, descended the stairs 2 at a time. In the living room, I grabbed my phone. Dead, charger unplugged, heart snaring. I flicked on the lamp. The soft glow revealed the front door's bolt still engaged, but the back door's ajar. No sign of forced entry elsewhere. The grey morning light hinted at muddy footprints near the threshold. I snapped the door shut and wedged a chair under the handle. I called my friend Sarah, voice trembling. She assured me she'll come straight away. As I waited, I researched hidden intruders living within walls or attics, known as wall jokers or cavity squatters. They've been documented in urban neighbourhoods worldwide. A 2017 case in Chicago found a burglar living in a family's home's crawl space for weeks, undetected by security systems, his footprints only showing up as faint scruffs on the concrete floor. The knock on the front door jolted me. Sarah's muffled voice called through the glass. I hurried to open it, flung it wide, and there she stood, eyes wide with alarm. I shoved my bag at her and pointed upstairs. Together, we ascended to the hatch. My hands shook as I raised it again. Behind it lay a narrow passage, half swallowed by darkness. "Call the police," Sarah whispered. I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. While we waited, my beam in hand, we edged forward into the crawl space. The air was colder up there, foul with mould. We crawled on elbows until my light caught a pair of legs curled beneath a threadbare blanket. A face looked up, pale, hollow-eyed, shock of black hair matted to the skull. He half smiled. Saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth. I recoiled. Sarah cursed and backed out, slamming the hatch. We stumbled downstairs. Sirens wailed in the distance. Behind, through the ceiling panel, I heard frantic scratching as the intruder bolted deeper into the attic network. The dispatch operator insisted we stay safe and wait. Moments later, officers flooded the house, tactical gear, rifles drawn. They found him wedged between 2 joists, covered in cobwebs. He confessed he researched the blueprints online and discovered the DIY tunnel decades ago, then widened it to live rent-free, feeding on a neighbour's power line. He'd explored the home, learned our routines, and planned to remain unnoticed. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. As they escorted him out, I realised the tunnel extended far beyond the one hatch, an entire labyrinth within our walls. The intruder had vanished beyond the beams into darkness I couldn't reach. They say they searched for hours, but found only empty passageways and fresh mud stains leading deeper into the house. If you made it this far, maybe you're not like the others. Hit subscribe and I'll keep the stories coming. My own phone betrayed me, sending messages I never wrote from a number that was unmistakably mine. I moved into flat 4B of Langford Court 2 months ago, a tidy 1-bedroom apartment nestled above a row of shuttered shops in East London. It was the perfect bolt hole for a late night bar supervisor, close enough to the tube for a quick commute, yet quiet when I needed to sleep past noon. The building was old but well kept, polished banisters, a brass plaque at the entrance, and a concierge who never seemed to smile. I liked its weight of history, the way each room held a story. On a Tuesday evening in early April, I finished my shift at the Golden Cat pub around midnight. The air was crisp with spring promise, and I walked home under the glow of street lamps, heels clicking against the pavement. I unlocked the door, burdened with fatigue, and collapsed onto the sofa. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I checked the screen without really seeing it. A message from my own number. Dismissing it as a network glitch, I opened it. The text read, "I'm inside." I froze. My flat's deadbolt clicked shut behind me. Every window was locked. I double-checked the peephole. Empty corridor. The message timestamp glowed at 12:13. My shift had only ended 10 minutes earlier. I texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. My pulse thudded in my ears. I stood and flicked on every light, hallway, kitchen, living room. The apartment shimmed with harsh neon. I circled the space, listening for any hint of movement. The soft thud of footsteps, the creak of floorboards. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed again. Same number. Same sender. "Don't look for me." A low laugh rattled through my chest. I tried to delete the number, but the delete button was greyed out. It was as if the number were welded to my contacts. I paced towards the kitchen, phone in hand. I set it on the counter and opened the fridge to pour myself water. As I did, the screen lit up with another text. I yanked the phone back. The message read, "Water tastes better when shared." My heart sank. I backed away, but a sliver of logic told me to secure the door again. I jiggled the handle, still locked. No sign of forced entry. I tried calling my best friend, Martin. It went straight to voicemail. I left a trembling message. "Someone's got in. My own phone's messaging me. Call me." I waited, but no call back. I sank into the armchair, fumbling for a blanket, desperate for comfort. My phone buzzed. "Come to the kitchen." The text arrived 2 seconds ago, yet the phone had never left my hand. My thumb stilled above the touchscreen. The message glowed ominously. Slowly, I rose and headed down the short hallway, the blanket dragging behind me like a shroud. In the kitchen, the sink was empty, but the countertop held a single iced tea glass I'd never brought. A thin mist rose from it, spiraling like spectral smoke. A chill crept up my spine. I swallowed hard. My rational mind searched for an explanation, a forgotten delivery, a prank. But who could prank me from inside my own device? I used the kettle just minutes ago. Steam still curled from its sprout. I turned back towards the living room and my phone vibrated again. "I see you." Panic cracked my voice. "Show yourself," I whispered. No answer. I flicked off the kitchen light and plunged the room into darkness. I needed to escape this flat, to get help, but my legs refused to move. My phone chimed, this time an MMS, a photo. I unlocked the screen with trembling fingers. The image showed me as I sat on the armchair moments ago, head sagged, blanket around my shoulders. The angle was impossible. The camera must have been miles from me, looking in. I flicked to the next image. The corridor outside my bedroom door. Empty. Then another. The peephole view. Someone's silhouette standing just beyond the peephole, peering in. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the tiles. I lunged for the kitchen drawer, pulled out a small knife. Every instinct screamed, "Get out now." I pressed my back against the living room wall, breathing shallow, blade raised. My eyes darted towards the front door, still locked. I tried the intercom. The concierge light blinked, but no response. The building was ghost quiet. No cars on the street, no footsteps in the corridor. The locked window stared back at me. Another buzz. I stared at the screen. Stop hiding. In desperation, I searched online, when I could, between texts, for phone spoofing from own number. Reports from cybersecurity forums revealed a chilling possibility. Advanced malware can hijack a phone's messaging system, spoofing its own number and even interfacing with smart lock APIs. In other cases, Attackers who gain root access can manipulate system-level permissions, sending messages as the user and disabling deletion functions. It seemed unthinkable that someone could infiltrate not just my home, but my own device. I backed towards the hallway, knife raised, as the floorboard creaked behind me. I spun. Nothing. Yet my phone buzzed again. Turn around. I obeyed, heart hammering. A figure stood in the doorway of my bedroom. Tall, featureless in the darkness, face obscured by a hood. I charged, brandishing the knife, but my foot caught the rug. I stumbled. The figure advanced without sound. I slashed, but struck only air. The intruder grabbed my wrist, twisting. Pain shot up my arm. I kicked out. I heard a wet crack as my heel connected with bone. The figure staggered backwards, enough for me to wrench free. I sprinted to the living room, slammed against the front door, locked. The hooded shape blocked the peephole. I lunged for the intercom. My other hand tightened around the knife. "Security!" I screamed. "Call the police!" Silence. Then my phone chimed, still on the counter. I turned to retrieve it. The figure slipped past me like smoke, gliding into the kitchen. I lunged, but it was gone. The flat was empty. I grabbed my phone. A new text. "Goodbye." And beneath it, an attachment, a video file. With trembling thumb, I tapped it. I watched myself asleep in bed, blanket pulled up, eyelids fluttering. Then the camera panned to the door, my bedroom door, opening slowly. Footsteps, a silhouette leaned over the bed, and the screen cut to black. When the police finally broke in, after my roommate, concerned by my missed calls, summoned them, there was no sign of her intruder, no footprints on the tiles, no window forced. The knife lay on the floor, dried red smear across the handle. My phone lay on the counter, factory reset, all messages erased. They found no CCTV footage from the corridor. The concierge camera had been disabled. I moved out the next day, leaving everything behind. But sometimes, in quiet moments, my phone buzzes with a notification, a blank line from my own number. If you made it this far, maybe you're not like the others. Hit subscribe and I'll keep the stories coming. I heard voices in the nursery, soft, intimate whispers as if two strangers were discussing my daughter's name. I'd been a single father for just over a year when I finally felt like I settled into a routine. Our flat was a converted Victorian townhouse on a quiet street in Manchester. 2 floors of pastel walls and wooden floors that creaked pleasantly under the weight of memories. Every evening, after my daughter Lily, 6 months old with a mop of dark curls, had her bath, I'd settle her into the rocking chair in her nursery. The white noise baby monitor sat on the windowsill, its green light pulsing with the hum of my daughter's breath. On the night in question, I treated myself to a rare dinner out, a curry with an old friend. I'd kiss Lily goodnight at 8, listen to her soft gurgles through the monitor as I left the house, and double-check the front door lock before turning off the landing light. The world felt orderly. My daughter slept, the flat was secure. I had an hour of freedom. I returned home at 10:30. The street lamps threw long shadows through the front window as I unlocked the door. Inside, the flat smelled of sandalwood, my favourite incense. I made my way to the nursery, pausing at the doorway to glance at Lily's crib. She lay swaddled, her tiny chest rising and falling. The baby monitor sat beside her on the windowsill, its speaker silent. I flicked on the nursery light, but noticed nothing unusual. Mobile toys above the crib, a small bookshelf mounting a single row of board books, and the plush grey rug where Lily sometimes practiced tummy time. I sat my keys down and reached for the monitor. As I lifted it, I froze. The speaker was crackling with voices. 2 people were speaking, low and calm, discussing. What exactly? I held the monitor close and squeezed the power button. Nothing. The voices continued as though the device refused to die. My heart hammered as I crept closer, pressing the monitor speaker against my ear. The voices were hushed, gentle, male and female, exchanging greetings I didn't recognize. "She's lovely," the woman said softly. "Yes," the man replied. "Easiest entry we've had." My skin crawled. Who are you?" I murmured, but my own voice sounded alien. The voices didn't falter. I slammed the nursery door shut, clutching the monitor like a lifeline. Back in the hallway, I shook, palms slick with sweat. I pressed the monitor's power switch again. Click, and silence. Relief washed over me. I leaned against the wall, breathing shallow. 5 minutes later, I heard it, the monitor's light blinking back to life. The voices returned, as if defying the power switch. I raced back in, yanked open the door. Nothing. Lily's crib was empty of sound, but still. The voices whispered on, but I dropped the monitor in shock, and it clattered to the floor, skidding under the bookshelf. I crouched to retrieve it. The voices ended. A hiss of static, then a single phrase in a voice whisper soft and intimate. "He'll never know." I staggered back, dread knotting my stomach. The air in the flat felt suddenly denser, every shadow a threat. I glanced at the locked front door, then at the nursery window, latched, with heavy drapes drawn, trapped. 10:39 p.m. I called my neighbour, Helen, who lived 2 floors below. She answered groggily. I whispered my predicament. She promised to check our landing CCTV in the morning. I didn't have CCTV. My phone's camera was shot after Lily hurled a carrot at it, but I needed proof. 10:47 p.m. I stood outside the nursery door, hand hovering near my phone, considering calling 999. But what would I say? Someone spoke through the baby monitor. I pictured the operator's confusion. Instead, I texted my sister. "Something's wrong. If I don't reply in 10 minutes, call the police." 10:52 p.m. Silence. Then, through the monitor, a child's laugh. Too clear, too bright, and Lily was asleep. I bolted the nursery door, locked it, and wedged a dresser in front. 10:57 p.m. The flat grew unnaturally cold. My breath misted in the corridor. I wrapped my jacket around me and crept downstairs to fetch a kitchen knife. The voices on the monitor flickered between cooing and conspiratorial threat disguised as tenderness. I heard footsteps above me, soft, skittering across ceiling beams. I peered upwards. The nursery ceiling was solid. The whispering persisted. It felt achingly intimate, as though the voices knew Lily's every habit. I texted 999, hands trembling. "Home invasion, audio only, in my nursery, send help." Seconds later, no response. My phone lay useless in my hand. I bolted across the flat to the front door, locked, no key duplication, a trap. I returned to the nursery, knife in hand, and cracked the door open a sliver. The monitor lay on the floor, face down. I stepped inside. The air smelled of baby shampoo and something metallic, like blood. My breath caught. On the rug, a small stain, tiny, dark red. I knelt. There, a single drop of blood, nearly dry. Lily's crib rail had what looked like a smear of red. My mind reeled. She was uninjured. I'd seen her sleeping peacefully. The smear was too deliberate. A message? In overlaying my fear with research, I learned that audio-only baby monitors lack basic encryption, making them vulnerable to remote hacking. In 2019, a Pennsylvania family discovered strangers transmitting through their monitor speaker the sound of adult voices and music. Then in 2022, Reports emerged of devices broadcasting intimate conversations and even purposeful instructions to children. Hackers had exploited these vulnerabilities to frighten or coerce parents, often bypassing Wi-Fi passwords through poorly secured device firmware. I paced the nursery floor, knife clenched in white-knuckle grip. The monitor's green light flickered on its own. The voices resumed, synchronized, as though a script. "He's right there." I spun. My reflection in the nursery window showed me hunched, knife raised, and behind me, did I see movement? I took a step backwards. The reflection didn't match. My head was turned little, with a silhouette behind it. A tall figure, hunched over the crib, moved with preternatural smoothness. I lunged to grab my daughter's crib rail. The room spun. The shadow in the window reflected its own movement rather than mine. I leaned in closer. I screamed, blades slicing air. The monitor fell, screen shattered, and the voices cut off with crackling snap. Silence. I collapsed to my knees and scooped Lily into my arms. She cried once, a sharp sound of alarm that echoed into the empty room. I hushed her, rocking violently until her sobs quiet. I stood, dripping sweat, and backed out of the nursery. At the threshold, I saw it, on the windowsill where the monitor had been. 2 tiny footprints, muddy, too big to be Lily's or mine. They trailed off through the curtains, into the dark beyond the glass. I hurled the knife at the window. Glass exploded inwards. The curtains snagged on shard blades, ripping free. The muddy footprints ended at the still. Outside was the quiet street. No stairs, no fire escape, nothing to explain how someone with muddy boots left prints in that lofty room. I gathered Lily and fled into the night, never to return. The baby monitor remains in my car trunk, a trophy of terror. Sometimes, late at night, I hear it power on through the closed door, and I remember those whispers, promises made to my sleeping child. If you made it this far, maybe you're not like the others. Hit subscribe and I'll keep the stories coming. I thought the TV cabinet was empty, until a tiny unblinking red dot began to follow my every move in the dark. I'd taken the short-term rental in Brighton's Lane district for 2 nights of research. The building was a narrow Edwardian townhouse, painted pale blue, wedged between a vintage bookshop and a boutique tea room. Inside, wooden floorboards curved under the weight of history, and the decor was a kind of curated nostalgia. Brass candlesticks, velvet top stools, a well-worn Chesterfield sofa. I'd chosen it for its ambience, perfect for writing my feature on British hauntings. The host had assured me the place was fully renovated and tech-friendly, with high-speed Wi-Fi and a smart TV. On my first evening, I unpacked my notebooks and lit a beeswax candle on the mantel. The flat's living room was lined with shelves of dusty paperbacks, and a Persian rug softened the echo of my footsteps. I brewed a pot of Earl Grey and sat into the Chesterfield, poised to draft the opening paragraphs of my article. The smart TV stood across the room, silent, its screen reflecting the candlelight. I clicked on a documentary about Brighton's ghost tours and settled in. Midway through the credits, the TV powered off. Surprised, I rose and pressed the power button on the remote. Nothing. I tapped the screen. It flickered on, showed the home menu, then shut off again. I crouched before the cabinet, peering through its lattice-work doors. Nothing. No wires, no lenses, no sign of life. I shrugged. I chalked it up to a glitch and returned to my candlelit writing. That night, I slept deeply. The city's distant hum lulled me. At dawn, the harbour's gulls called me awake. I opened the curtains and saw the flat's narrow staircase leading upwards, unused, mysterious. I made tea, packed my bag for the day's interviews, and left, feeling only the mild curiosity that such old houses evoke. By the second night, the unusual felt normal. I returned by 9 p.m, tired from walking the seafront for hours, and made myself supper in the gallery kitchen. The flat smelled of aged pine and tea, a scent I almost found calming. I reheated yesterday's soup and ate at the small dining table beneath a brass chandelier. Later, I curled up on the sofa with my laptop, working by the glow of the candle and the fireplace embers. At 1 a.m, I shut the laptop and stretched. The room felt colder now. Howling wind rattled the sash windows. As I stood, the TV clicked on without command. The screen stayed black but for a single red dot blinking in the upper corner of the glass cabinet. I frowned. No menu, no images, just a dot. I pressed the remote. The dot vanished. I moved closer, noticing it reappeared on the TV stand itself, then on the wall behind the bookshelf. It scurried, ever present. My pulse quickened. I swept my gaze across the room. The cabinet's lattice, the TV's dark screen, the shelves. Still the dot appeared, as if tracking my gaze. I turned on every lamp. The living room burst into light. Antique sconces, the chandelier, a floor lamp. The red dot remained, unwavering on the cabinet's door's lattice. It blinked in time with my heart. I approached, pressed my cheek to the wood. There, a barely perceptible pinhole disguised beneath paint. A dot, a camera lens, half concealed, focused on me. I jerked back, heart hammering. Whoever planted it had studied the room, chosen that precise angle. I rifled through the cabinet's contents. No camera body, no device, just books and porcelain figurines. The lenses connected to nothing visible. How could it transmit? I fled the flat's living room and dashed to the narrow hallway, phone in hand. My fingers trembled as I dialed the host's number. It rang twice, then voicemail. I left a message. Found camera in living room. Call me immediately. I waited in the kitchen, knife in hand. How else to defend myself? No reply came. I crept back to the living room door. The red dot reappeared on the glass cabinet, then moved to the TV's bronze frame. It felt alive, sentient. I edged in, heart in my throat. I reached out to try to pry the panel from the cabinet, but the wood held firm. I needed proof, a way to trace the feed. I returned to the kitchen and grabbed my laptop. I opened the Wi-Fi scanner, scanning for unknown devices. Nothing. No IP cameras, no routers aside from the flat's network, yet the cameras transmitted. I stared at the scanner's results, the rental's router, and no other devices. The lens must be wired internally, perhaps linking into the building's shared broadband. I pocketed the knife and returned to the cabinet. Using the silver blade, I gently traced the lettuce lines, searching seams. The wood scraped. Behind one vertical slat, a narrow seam. Prying it revealed a hollow space. I pressed my phone's flashlight inside and saw an SD card slot and two tiny LEDs, one blinking faintly. I extracted the card and the SD reader, my heart pounding. The lens remained in place, glued to the lattice. I crushed the card under my heel. The LEDs winked out, the red dot flickered once and vanished. Silence returned. The flat seemed empty, devoid of menace. I sat on the sofa, breathing shallow, listening to the wind. I spent an hour researching on my phone, switching the kettle on and off to starve off panic. Hotels and rentals have a history of hidden surveillance. Cameras in alarm clocks, USB chargers, even smoke detectors. But this one was something new. A camera wired invisibly behind a wooden cabinet, transmitting over a router I couldn't detect. I shivered as a thought crawled into my mind. What had it recorded already? I checked every room. The slender staircase led to a locked attic hatch I could barely reach. I tried it. It wouldn't budge. The bedroom had an old floral wallpaper and an antique washstand. Nothing unusual. bathroom was tiled in green and white, fixtures polished. No camera lenses glinted in the mirror's corners. Every inch of the flat I searched. I found nothing, yet I knew I was watched. I returned to the sofa, pressed my palms to my eyes, and forced myself to breathe. I considered leaving immediately, calling the police and the platform, but I needed evidence. Without it, I'd be a mad woman claiming hidden cameras. And what if they returned while I checked out? I set the SD reader on the mantle, resolved to download the footage. I booted my laptop and inserted the reader. A single file appeared, an MP4. I clicked play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Me, sitting on the Chesterfield at 11 PM, my journal open, candle flickering. The next clip showed me asleep on the sofa at 1 AM, head lolling, blanket over my lap. I frowned. I'd woken, turned off the TV, then gone straight to bed. How did it capture that? It recorded through the lattice? The lens was angled perfectly. I scrolled to the final clip, timestamp 2:11 AM. The camera captured a dark shape moving behind me, an indistinct figure shifting from the kitchen into the hallway. I sat bolt upright, heart hammering. The figure paused just at the edge of the frame, then vanished. My breath caught. I rewound, watched it twice. It was real. My heart buzzed. A message from the host. "You found it. You'll see more when I'm ready." My blood ran cold. The host knew. Someone in this house had watched me all night and was now taunting me. I looked around the living room. Every shadow seemed to shudder. The wind rattled the window. The lens hole glowed faintly in the dark. I grabbed the laptop and the SD card, fled through the hall into the kitchen. I yanked open the back door, framed by a narrow fire escape leading down to the alley. The night air hit me like ice. I sprinted down the metal stairs, clutching the laptop, and dashed into the empty street. My breath formed white clouds. I didn't stop until I reached the main road, where a taxi idled. I jumped in, telling the driver, "Please go, now!" At the police station, I handed over the card and described the footage. Officers filed a report but warned me such invasions rarely lead to arrest. Hosts cover their tracks, cards are scrubbed, networks untraceable. I checked out of the rental that morning, leaving my suitcase by the curb. The flat's door was locked behind me, with a small piece of wooden lattice lay in the palm, a splinter from the hidden lens hole. I'll never return to that house. Yet late at night, when I close my eyes, I see the red dot blinking in the darkness, watching through that tiny hole.